Immediately, you said right away, it was, I have to start my own business now.
In Israel, we lived there when there was a lot going on with the Intifada.
You can go to your partner, Danny, and say, Danny, this was the best hire we had.
Before we know it, we are managing 3,000 units. I cold called the guy. Sure enough, he answered. I love that question. It's such a good question. No, it really is.
Welcome back to everybody to the Mavrik Journey, where we sit down with some of the most brilliant people to get the insight of the builds and the start of their careers to help us with our start of our careers. I'm sitting here with Tzvika Ferst. Tzvika, please introduce yourself.
Well, Simcha, great to be here. Thank you for having me on. My name is Tzvika Ferst, co-founder of TDI Properties. We're a Los Angeles-based property management and syndication firm with a focus on apartment buildings, multifamily units here in Los Angeles. And we manage a very wide range of different type of multifamily properties.
That's awesome. So Tzvika, just give us a little bit of your background, Yeshiva, school, and kind of the years of that.
Sure. So I was born in Los Angeles and had the privilege of growing up in Israel. My parents made Aliyah when I was about 7 years old. I went to Teresemes, which is a extremely Lubavitch, hardcore type of school. Think of anyone out there who saw Shtisel. That was pretty much my upbringing, that type of background in school.
Yeah.
From there, went to different yeshivas, Kfar Chabad, Kirgat, London, Alitara, and yeah, that's pretty much it.
Awesome. And what year did you finish Alitara? Did you finish?
Alitara, I finished in 1998. 1998, and after Alitara, I went to Israel, got my smicha.
That's great. So you finished Yeshiva and you said in 1998.
Mm-hmm.
Coming out of Yeshiva, what was like the first approach that you had to then going into maybe your first job or the first business?
So I think what really kicked off me going into work is getting married young. I got married at 21 years old. My oldest son, AB, was born when I was just about 23. So I had no choice. I had to go to work and I got to pay the bills. So in default, that's what really got me focused and motivated to get into the workforce.
Got it. So what was that first job that you got into?
So Baruch Hashem, luckily, a week after I got, or a couple of weeks after I got married, I got a phone call from a good friend of mine, Danny Fishman, who was living in Los Angeles.
Shout out to Danny.
And shout out to Danny. And Danny calls me with this unbelievable opportunity where he was working for a company that supplies duty-free with different products like beef jerky, watches, all types of products that duty-free sells. And they were contracted out with a very large, one of the largest duty-free companies in the world called DFS. This is when the Ben Gurion Airport was being built, called Natbag Alpine. And they were looking for they're looking for bids on the duty-free concession. So this company had, ties with DFS, and DFS hired them to do all the research in order to, break into the Israeli market and take over that, that duty-free business. Little did they know that I was the guy who was going to do all the research for them. So Danny called me, said, listen, this is the information that we need to get us pricing on, everything that they sell in Ben Gurion currently. Get us information on stuff that they're selling on the Jordanian border and the Egyptian border. So I was literally cross-driving the country for about a few months, for at least a half a year, and getting all this information. I was pretty much their guy on the ground, and that was my first job, and it was a very, very fun experience and very rewarding, and I met some amazing people along the line. Unfortunately, due to the Intifada, DFS decided to scrap that. So, because I was potentially going to be working with them long term, but that unfortunately went out the window. And then shortly after, I started a job with a good friend of mine, Yossi Swerdlov, who I'm very thankful to. He hired me when I was just about 22 years old, and he got the licensing to operate hotels.com in Hebrew, in Israel. So I helped him with launching the company and, doing a lot of the background work in terms of the website and, translation from hotels.com to, it was called hotelsonline.co.il. It doesn't exist today. I don't think it does. And it was a groundbreaking type of idea in Israel, because in Israel, they didn't have anything before that. You go to your travel agent and you book your hotel or your plane. And over here, it was like this new idea that was amazing. So for him, I worked with him about a year and a half, and that was pretty much the end of my Israeli working experience. And shortly after that, I moved to the United States when I was
That's
about 24.
that's great. I mean, making websites back then isn't so simple. I guess the translation was something that you had the skills on. Where did you learn maybe how to build a website back then? What were like sort of the steps that you took when you were like, I have my first job, people are giving me responsibilities, let me go and figure this out. How did you handle that?
So actually, I have zero background in building websites. I would say, I think my value is in sales. That my job was twofold. One was to bring hotels.com to different travel agents across the country. That was one part. Also assisting in the translation of the website, and then also working within the office in sales of hotels. So that was pretty much the two
Got it.
parts of the job.
So more on the sales front, understood.
Yeah.
So now you have these two jobs that you got at right away with both ended up, you're finishing with those two. What was that next step then? Now like you said, you got married right away. So income is something super important that's got to be, it's not negotiable. It has to be in the door every month. So what was the first, like, I got to find something right now?
So unfortunately, in Israel, we lived there when there was a lot going on with the Intifada. There was whatever. It wasn't a great time. So I decided that I need to make a move. Do something a little bigger. And I had an opportunity within a family business to move to Los Angeles. My father owned some real estate, so he asked me if I could come and kind of help him out. Just it wasn't to grow the business, but just like to maintain whatever he had at that time. So it was a good opportunity for me to move to Los Angeles and start something on my own while I had some side. It wasn't big money, but it was like some type of nominal salary that can start my own company.
That's awesome. Okay, so then you move back to Los Angeles. You're working for your father. You're having something come in. Immediately, you said right away, it was, I have to start my own business now. So what was kind of like the first things you looked into? What were those kind of situations like?
So I think I moved around 2004. 2004, and I didn't have any experience in real estate. The only experience that I had was, as a kid, I always loved real estate. I used to talk to my father just, about different deals and different, real estate terminology and stuff like that. My grandfather was a developer, and I used to sit with him in summers or just different times when I used to meet him, and we would go over like different contracts and plans and stuff like that. So I knew I wanted to go into real estate, but I didn't know like what's the right way. Like, going into real estate is like becoming, it's like a doctor. Like, what type of doctor do you want to be? Do you want to be a cardiologist? Do you want to be a nurse? Do you want to be there's so many departments within the medical field. Like, what do you want to choose? So I had, I had a difficult time making that choice, but I realized the easiest industry to get into, at least for me, and back then, by the way, the mortgage business was a huge business. My brother-in-law was in that business, very successful, but that wasn't something that spoke to me. So property management was like something that felt that was, much easier to get into. That's what, I decided I was going to do. And what helped me really get into that business was I found my partner, Danny Levin. We've been partners for over close to 25 years now. And Danny had a background that I didn't have, and I had a little bit of a background that he didn't, which is, he had more of like operations, construction, maintenance, all the stuff that I don't care about. Don't ask me what a toilet costs. I couldn't tell you. That's Danny Levin's department. And my background was when I was in Israel. Actually, I was also going to Touro College, and unfortunately, I didn't finish my degree. I would have loved to finish it, but I had bills to pay, and I had people that rely on me. So a year before I finished, I left Israel. So I had some accounting experience, some finance, macro, micro stuff that you would learn in college, like on a BA level. So finding Danny Levin and creating that partnership was really what got us going on the
That's
property
all.
management side.
That's fantastic. So you found a partner, each had your own skills to bring to the table, and we said together we can pull this off. What was finding your first client like? So that was, it sounds like you were the sales guy. How did you find them? How did you convince them? You're brand new. What was that?
Great question. And till today, I don't know why that first person gave me a building, but he did. Um, Someone who I'm very grateful to. His name is Arya Siegel. He davens in Beis Betzalel, if you know who he is. And I told him I'm starting this property management company, and he was nice enough to refer us our first client, which was a 15-unit building, an apartment building. We were maybe making, I don't know, $600-700 a month on that building, but we were so happy just to get our first client. The client was a doctor who owned a property and needed a property manager, so there we go. And then from there it was just you go from one client to another client, and you just start building a portfolio of properties. And I can sit here for 5 hours and tell you so many stories of the different clients that went through TDI throughout the years. One specific client, because I think it's pretty funny, and it was as we were building out our company, we had a employee that we hired. She was on the bookkeeping side, and she tells me, Tzvi, there's this guy that I know, and he's extremely wealthy. He owns about 15,000 units here in Los Angeles.
Wow.
I know his wife, and you should give him a call because I think he's looking for property management. I cold called the guy, and sure enough, he answers. He answers his phone. I said, "Hey, my name is Tzvika Ferst. I was referred to you by this person, and we're in the property management business. And I see, some of your properties are in our neighborhood where we operate. Do you need property management?" He's like, "Actually, thank you for calling me because I actually have a portfolio of, I think it was 3,000 units that he wanted to piece off and give it to us." So I thought, this was wild. Like, he didn't interview me, nothing. The next day I know his attorney's calling me, they're drafting up management agreements. And before we know it, we are managing 3,000 units, which was insane for us. It was both an amazing experience, but also extremely challenging. It was, I think, challenging because we didn't really understand the client's needs. And we were more like small time, like managing a four unit, a 15 unit, but like to manage that amount of units, I wasn't going to turn it down. I said, you know what, ask for forgiveness later, and hopefully this will all work out. And it was a great account. And this guy would call me at all hours of the night. He called me from his plane at 2 o'clock in the morning, would wake me up. He knew like everything that was going on the properties, and wanted reporting. And he was extremely, extremely demanding. But he had a big portfolio, and he wanted results. So that was a very cool experience, to the point that when we got this client, we knew that it was going to be a big undertaking. So me and Danny took our wives out for dinner one night, and we explained to them what is about to happen. And what is about to happen is that we are getting into something that we're not really sure how we're going to manage it, but we know it's going to take a lot of our time. But hopefully, it's going to be very rewarding to us, to a point where in the middle of Pesach, I was spending Pesach in Big Bear with my family, and Danny Levin was spending Pesach somewhere else. And he calls us and he tells us, "I need to meet with you guys right now. Right now, like today. Go explain to him you're on Pesach with your family, this, that." He doesn't care. So, I had to break it to my wife and my kids that I got to leave for the night. And I drove down from Big Bear to Beverly Hills. He lives in one of the largest estates in Beverly Hills. And just sitting there with Danny Levin in this guy's house, okay, it was just like, it was this unbelievable experience. We're sitting with the person who owns 15,000 units. We're literally right out of Yeshiva. We don't know A from Z. We're trying to pretend that we know what's going on, but he was with us, and there was, anyways, it was a great experience. And we parted ways about a half a year later for a variety of reasons, but that was a real Harvard education that we got in property management going through that experience.
So that was taking on like a huge responsibility unknowingly And that kind of paved the path of, okay, if we're going to start having so many units under our property management, we need to know X, Y, and Z, exactly zoomed in. So I guess maybe could we get a little bit into that, the first few days of getting this new client? So now all of a sudden he's writing up agreements, you're signing, and you got to start managing all of these buildings. What's the first thing that you even do at that point? Is it going to every single building, letting them know your management, putting someone in place? Like, what does that even look like?
So great question. We had to build out a system literally off the bat. So we created like a checklist of everything that we thought we needed to do for these properties and how we're going to onboard these properties into our system. So if it's onboarding into our software that we were using, notifying all the tenants, coordinating with all the vendors that were servicing those properties, opening up bank accounts for each one of the properties, getting familiar with the owner, operators, lenders, and what their needs are for reporting, and hiring staff. We had to hire staff. We didn't have staff that can handle that amount of units. So those were a lot of the challenges that we were dealing with. I would say for the first 2 months, and just kind of it was a day by day, and there was a lot of juggling. I was sitting in the office until very late at night and making sure things get done.
Right? It was just finding out exactly what you need, writing it out literally one by one. Okay, how do
One
we
by
do
one.
this? How do we do
Yep.
this?
Yep.
That
And it's
is, yeah, that's awesome. And I guess would you say that was like the biggest scaling moment of your property management business?
It was one of them. It was one of them in the property management business. I got to say, it was definitely one of them. We've had big clients in the past, but that was like the biggest client we ever got until that point. Because of the mortgage crisis that was going in 2008, there was a lot of homes that were going into foreclosures, and we had a lender that we were connected with, and when they're sitting on 1,000 homes, they need someone to manage it. So we were that one of their vendors. We weren't exclusive in Los Angeles, but we were one of their vendors, and at that time we were managing about 1,000 homes
Wow,
in Los Angeles that were under foreclosure.
that's awesome.
Yeah.
If I can maybe poke a little bit, was there a moment, a mistake, something that happened that was, if maybe it was just a lack of knowledge, but was there something that happened that was extremely, could have been very destructive? And what were the steps that you took to handle that?
So actually, there are many of those moments, but I'll point out to one moment which taught me a lot. With one of our largest clients that we had, in the management agreement, it stipulates, what we're allowed to pay for, what authorizations do we have for. I mean, it's a very structured management agreement. And one thing we realized, and we only noticed it later on because we were so happy and giddy that we have these big clients, is that we were hiring our own vendors, and we were responsible to pay for those vendors out of the property management accounts that we were collecting rents, right? So that bank account would pay for different expenses. And what we didn't realize at the time is that here we're hiring vendors, not the owner. TDI Properties is hiring the vendors. We're responsible to pay those vendors. Those vendors don't know who owns the property. They look at you as a property management company. They don't care who's the owner of the property. And here we're building up all these payables to these vendors. And one of the owners of this portfolio insisted that the thing that's most important is to pay the mortgage. Okay, but we didn't know a lot of math back then. What was going on is that the mortgage was probably eating into 80% of the cash flow. So
Whoa.
there was very little cash flow to pay vendors. Okay. Here we're thinking very innocently, oh, we'll just hire vendors, the owner's going to pay for it and all that and all that. But we were really digging ourselves into a very deep hole where we were, hiring vendors, and we realized that, what? Wow, we have all these payables. And if this person pulls the plug tomorrow, we're stuck with all these payables. We have to go run after an owner. I had sleepless nights when I realized what was going on, and thank God it wasn't too late in the game. But I came the next day to the office and I said, pay all the bills. It was right after we collected rent, and I said, pay everything. I want everything paid because I have a feeling that there's something, fishy going on over here. And I was right, because right after we paid all the bills, like 3 weeks later, we got a termination notice for paying all those bills. But that could have been something that could have shut us down. So, and that was only something that we've learned through experience as it was going on.
So that's what I was going to say. So someone who's looking maybe to get into property management or wants to open their own property management company, what do you think the number one thing they should be doing in that case, so to say, to make sure something like that doesn't happen? Is it knowing the numbers? Is it agreements? What's
Right. So those are great questions, because you're like in any industry, especially in property industry, there's a lot of liability that you have to be aware of, and it's not so forgiving if you don't know what you're doing, or your math is off, or your numbers are off. So first of all, I would say this, by the way. I'll take a step back. If someone wants to get in a property management business, I think there's some value, some big value of partnering up with someone, because a you're delegating the risk to to a 50% partner. You're both on the same page. Hopefully, you're both waking up in the morning determined and wanting the same goals. Second, you can't do everything. You don't have the background of everything. So, like, take the example of me and Danny Levin. We have very, very different backgrounds. So that's very important. And then it's really, seeking legal counsel and talking to attorneys or CPAs, and really asking those questions. ChatGPT in this world is great, but still, like, actually talking to someone and get some real information from them, that's very important. And then what I did, which was very helpful, is I took some courses within the property management business that really helped me till today, that I use that information until today. It wasn't just about property management, but it was really also understanding how deals work, and how does the cash flow work? How does the whole animal of property management work in terms of management, construction, maintenance, dealing with tenants, all that stuff. So that was very helpful to me.
That's so you're advising is that even if you're getting into a specific sector of property management, getting on the online courses and learning the whole range will can give you a sense of protection almost.
So I don't know if it's so much protection; it's more awareness of what's going on and what are the questions you need to ask, right? So you want to be, when you're sitting with any professional, you're sitting. It's not just, you don't want to be in the dark. You kind of want to know what the background is, and just for that professional to help you figure out how to get from point A to point B. But having people that you can rely on, and solidify the information or the questions that you have, or the different challenges that you're struggling with, will come if you have some basic background knowledge.
Gotcha. So just taking a step back, so you said delegation for you was something that really helped you out, getting a partner. I want to maybe ask a little bit into the onboarding. My, when you start out with one other person. And then right away, I'm sure, as you said, someone hands you 1,000 units that all of a sudden you have to be in charge of. What's the delegation looking like as, business owners to start handing off responsibilities? What were those first days of like hiring people? What was the process? What did you learn on the best ways to bring on somebody into a business?
So I think in my case, it was more like I was thrown into the deep water, and I didn't have a choice but to delegate. That's just it. It was so big at that point that I didn't have a choice. I had to delegate. The question is, what am I delegating, and to whom I'm delegating? So I think in my case specifically, it was very clear what Danny's department was and what my department was looking like. So Danny was more on operations and more on budgeting for construction and maintenance, and then hiring maintenance under him and property supervisors, and all the different personnel that it takes to run the properties. My side of the business was focused more on the accounting side, the finance, the banks, the lenders, all that stuff, and delegating the pieces of my department to different people that I hired. So, and it's not something that I figured out, day one. Those are things that and I continue to figure them out until this day. We're constantly looking how to delegate more, and how to put things that are more automated, and that type of stuff. And those, it's like riding a bicycle. Those are things that at least from my perspective, that was something that I just got to learn every day, just moving day to day, and going through the challenges and obstacles and delegating.
So that basically leads me to my follow-up question, which is if you have a young guy who's, you know, looking for a job, you guys are looking to hire, you get a new employee to come into your business, what is it that you want to see from them, from this young person with energy? What do you want to see that in 6 months' time you can go to your partner Danny and say, Danny, this was the best hire we had?
I love that question. It's such a good question. No, it really is. Um, because I'll tell you, many employees are great, and there's some that will let you down. You know, I think the first quality that I'm looking into an employee is someone who actually cares. What I mean by caring is, you know, they're here on time. They wake up in the morning. They're excited to come to work. They feel that they own their position. We've always been a results driven type of company. I was never a type of guy to look at, you know, what hour did you come? But you know, but when you see someone here and they're leaving early, and not always are they leaving early, they're here to stay, you know, sometimes over hours, and they actually care and they want to be rewarded for that. I love that. I'll give you one example. We had one of our best employees ever, where she came into our office. She was recommended by a friend of ours, and she had zero property management experience, and it was a few months before COVID, and she was looking for any job. So I said, you know what, actually, maybe you can help us on the leasing side. We have some apartments that we need to lease out, and come, you know, and come help us with the leasing. And for 6 months, she mastered everything you need to know about leasing. And she knew all the different programs and Section 8 and different subsidies, and just, you know, how to market and show our units nicely. And she was really in it. And I said, you know what? I was very happy with the performance of her job. And I said, you know what? I'm going to have her come into our meetings, you know, the meetings that me and Danny would be in, and, you know, a little bit more high level. And sure enough, you know, after a few months, she comes over because she had she's from South America, but she had a family. She was running a family business there. She had a lot of experience, business experience, but when it came to property management and real estate, she didn't really have that experience. And she says to me, you know, Tzvika, listen, I'm seeing what's going on. I can be really, really, you know, of more value to you than on the leasing side. I said, how so? And she says, well, I see you're doing this, you're doing that, and I think I could fix this. I can fix that. I could do this better and that better. And I gave her the chance, and the reason I gave the chance, because she proved herself. She proved that she showed up when it was important. And I said, this is someone that I want working for me, you know, long term. This is someone that I can actually build around, because they actually care and they bring value to the table. And she ended up being our number 3 in the company, where and we can get to later into syndications and prime properties, but she was very much involved in all of that, and you know, taking us to our next level in TDI Properties. She was very, very much a part of that. But it was because I was able to rely on her, and she showed the confidence, and you know, that was very, very telling that she has a lot of potential.
That's awesome. So really just showing that you care and giving that extra effort, I guess, goes a long way.
And it goes, it doesn't go unnoticed. You know, as a business owner, when you have that employee or employees that are putting their step forward, they're not just here just to collect a check and go home. And there's some people that, you know, that's good. You know, the front desk person doesn't need to show that they're going home with TDI Properties, right? They're picking up phone calls or answering some emails. But if you want to be that person that grows within a company, trust me, a business owner, or at least a smart business owner, will know who that person is that they want to grow with.
That's awesome. So you mentioned that you were going from property management and then you mentioned the syndications. Can you maybe expand kind of that transition?
Okay. So I remember like it was yesterday. I was actually taking your father, Rabbi Zion, to the airport,
Hmm.
and I was telling him how I got this big account of property management, and you know, he looks at me and he tells me, Tzvika, it's great that you're managing property, but you need to start owning. And sometimes someone has to tell you something that's gonna, you know, do a little click in your head. And it was that moment where I got a click in my head. And I was like, yeah, what am I doing? Why am I just managing properties? Like, it's great that I have this portfolio of management and I'm very busy, and But at the end of the day, you know, any client can pull, you know, a management account from you, and then you don't have that account anymore. So how are you going to build something that's a little bit more secure? So the first deal that we bought, so talk about the challenges of putting that together. You know, we never put a deal together. We didn't know how to raise the capital to buy the deal. We didn't have the money to buy a deal. Talking about, you know, financing, going to lender and getting a loan. We didn't have the balance sheet, the credit to get those types of loans. How do we go about that? And Baruch Hashem sent us an amazing messenger, an Ish Chesed here in Los Angeles. His name is Levi Reichik. And I told Levi what I was going through, and Levi said, you know what, I have a guy that I want to introduce you to. And sure enough, that person became our first investor who believed in us. We bought a 12-unit building in West Adams, and it was a building that we actually managed. And it was a building where that client owned a few properties and was going into foreclosure on a few of them. We knew the property really well because we managed it, and we knew the opportunity. So we're like, this is the right property to buy. And, you know, to go through the challenges of buying that property. It was a small, but I mean, you know, for us now, I mean, it's a 12-unit building. It's still, you know, it's a nice building, but I'm saying back then that was like the biggest thing we were dealing with. So, you know, dealing with the brokers and dealing with the lenders and dealing with the capital, all that stuff, and losing literally nights of sleep of how am I going to do this? And the biggest anxiety is fear of failure. Like, I need us to go through, I need us to close. And you're waking up and going to sleep with that every single day. And how am I going to get through that? But, you know, Hashem has his ways, and Baruch Hashem gave us like the tools that we needed to buy our first deal, which really let us open up this massive window to buying, you know, other properties. And once we did one deal, you know, it's not that it's easier, it's not that it's easy, but it's definitely, you know, you have that experience. And, you know, the next acquisition wasn't as challenging. It was still challenging, but it wasn't as challenging. And, you know, through our relationships with brokers, and, you know, this is just a, you know, Baruch Hashem, we were blessed to have very good relationships. Some of my closest friends are real estate brokers, you know, that were really friends. And one of them, who's a very good friend of mine, his name is Josh Cohen, never sold me a deal, but we always had a liking. We would see each other at different events and go out sometimes and just talk, you know, about property and this and that. And he had this building in a neighborhood that we were very familiar with, and I knew this deal was like a crazy deal. I said, Josh, I need to buy this deal. Please give me the opportunity to buy it. And Josh says, well, you know what it's going to take because it's such a good deal. You know, when you buy a property, you have to put down a deposit, and then you have your due diligence period, and, you know, you can always cancel the deal and get your deposit back. But in this case, Josh said, you have to do something which is called non-contingent day one. You have to put up $500,000 and go into the deal knowing that you're going to close, because if you don't close, you're losing $500,000. And I was able to go to my investors and explain to them what's going on. They realized the opportunity too, because I was able to, you know, properly present it to them. And I'm very thankful to Josh that he had the confidence in me that I was able to pull it off. Here I only have one deal under my belt, but because of my relationship with him, he trusted I was going to be the guy that was going to close on it. So having, you know, those relationships in place were very, very helpful to us to, you know, to continue buying and getting the deals. And of course, you know, we're very thankful to, you know, all the people who've, you know, invested with us and come along, you know, with us for, you know, the different rides. And, you know, I'll just end off on the syndication point of, you know, we had a recent acquisition. You know, today, right now, for those of you who are a little bit in tune to what's going on in the market, it's not a great real estate market right now. Values have dropped, you know, interest rates are high, and not to get too technical, but it also creates opportunity. And we just closed on a pretty sizable deal. And the reason we were able to close on it was because I got a phone call Erev Pesach, literally Erev Pesach, in the morning. I was away with my family in Greece for Pesach, and I try not to work while I'm away, but when this phone call came in, I picked up. Like, why would they be calling me? And it was a deal that they had to get out of, and they said, Tzvi, we know you're the guy who's going to be able to do it. And it was because of the relationship and they trusted us and they knew that we were going to be the right person to do that, we were able to acquire this portfolio, which Be'ezra Hashem is going to be very, very good for us, Mirza Hashem. And again, it all comes back to relationships and being nice to people and being honest, and building on that will get you a long way in growing anything that you're doing. So
That's great. And I think an amazing point for anyone who's getting into property management is you really start to learn, all the sides of what makes a good building profitable. And I think it's so important to realize that and to put in the time to really study and understand all the sides, because then it becomes an opportunity of maybe I'm in property management for now for the next 5, 10 years, but then you can start really understanding what's a good deal. And that sounds like a really big scalable moment for anyone, starting out in
so
property management.
uh, you couldn't have said it better. That's absolutely correct. And we didn't even realize that by going into property management, that was actually the best entryway for us to get into buying real estate, because now we knew how the car works, the wheel, the tires, the engine. We know how everything is working. So, I'm looking at 100 deals a week that brokers are sending me. And the reason I'm able to go through them quickly is because we have that property management experience and we know what's real and we know what's not. So if it's, if it's the rents, if it's expenses, if it's, how the operations, the neighborhood, all that stuff, we already have a lot of that background. So that definitely helped us get to where we are today.
Yeah, that's a huge opportunity. So going back for a moment, someone who's young, ambitious, and they're looking to get into property management, I guess I would ask, is there anything that, looking back at, all the mistakes that you've made, is there anything that stands out that when someone is getting into property management that maybe they should look out for? Or on the flip side, is there any opportunity that you think they can zone in on and maybe emphasize in the beginning that would have led them to a growth quicker?
So it's what I said, going back. I think it's, I know today there's this, fast-paced type of mentality. I want to do it today. And I have that mentality. I had that mentality. And I wish that I would have gone out there and got a little bit more education on property and property management, or worked for somebody else and got that experience. I didn't do that. Looking back, I think that should have been, the first move for me. So that way I know what I'm talking about. Like I would go into, one thing I used to do in my early years as trying to get more clients in the door. I did a lot of networking. Any networking event that I can go to, I was there, just to talking to people. And I realized that people want to see, they're not just looking to make conversation with you. It's great. Hi, how are you? Cute. You're great. Nice. Thank you very much. They're talking to the next person. Like if there's nothing that you can offer them, there's not, there's no real substance there. And, the conversation doesn't really lead to anywhere. And that's when I realized that I need to know what I'm talking about, because if I know what I'm talking about, then I'm going to be able to have more meaningful conversations, and more meaningful conversations lead to referrals and business. Oh, I can trust this guy. Tzvika knows what he's talking about. I know what he's talking. I can trust him because he knows A, B, and C. So I think that was very important, but that took me trial and error to learn. And going back, I think there could have been a shortcut to that, to where I am today.
Got it. So being super educated into the business that you're looking to get into as much as possible.
100%. And I'll tell you, what we only realized years after within our property management business is that we would get brokers that would call us when they were taking deals onto the market to sell their multifamily buildings. They would call me and say, "Hey, Tzvika, are these rents that, we're projecting, are they real numbers? Are the expenses, real expenses?" And why are they calling me? Because we're the operation guys. We know how to manage properties. And little did we realize we are a valuable, very, very valuable resource to brokers when they're, trying to sell or present their buyers or sellers, whatever it is. And because we were educating them, we were giving them real valuable information.
Information on what it actually takes and costs to operate a building?
Yes.
Wow.
Absolutely. Yeah. And before we know it, like when I'm walking into a room, oh, so how's this area doing? How is that area doing? What type of renters can we find? What type of rent can you expect? What are the programs paying? So, without realizing, suddenly I'm like this go-to guy for brokers and lenders that need information.
Wow. So I guess I would want to shift a little bit. What would you say that your day kind of looked like in the beginning, as opposed to maybe the day that you have now?
So at the day at the beginning, even when I had nothing to come to the office to because we had no clients,
Right.
I was always up at 5:30 o'clock in the morning. Doesn't matter what it is. I was always up at 5 o'clock, 5:30 in the morning. I had my routine. If it's learning, davening, exercising, whatever that means, and then coming to the office. Even sometimes coming to the office with not a whole lot to do, but at least I had a place to go to, and I knew one thing: I can't stay home and not do anything. Even if that nothing means coming to the office and getting out, that's already something. It's like someone who has a hard time working out or going to the gym. First drive to the parking lot, get to the parking lot. Okay, the next day after the parking lot, go inside to the gym. So it's that type of exercise where it's like, you know, just first come to the office, and then maybe you'll get a call and there's a meeting, a coffee or something, a networking event, and it was really just it wasn't planned. So that's how I start off my days. Okay, and then of course we got this client and that client, but it was being very patient. It was being patient because I knew something was going to come. It's just being patient. If we're consistent and we're doing what we need to do, the business is going to come. That had shifted tremendously today. And going back to delegation, because we're able to delegate, we have more free time to do the stuff that we want to do and actually building the business. But that routine of waking up early in the morning and getting over all your emails and your texts and getting kind of ahead of the game, that's very important. I do that till today. That's my routine in the morning.
That's awesome. So stepping outside of business a little bit, adding a Yiddishkeit perspective, what was kind of the balance that you found to say, now we have a lot of clients, we have a lot going on. Is important to me, and what did you bring in that you feel that if someone can start that at a young age can be very helpful?
I think having a family community structure is extremely important. Baruch Hashem, we are blessed to be part of the Chabad Sola community. Building on that, if it's through learning, through minyan, friends, family, kids, raising them. Life can get complicated and very challenging. And having structure, what your day is going to look like. I've talked to my kids about this. If you look at my calendar, it's packed. I'm always a calendar guy. Everything I do is in my calendar. And that gives me, the structure that I need throughout the day. And that, it's everything from waking up at 5:30 o'clock in the morning, and during the week, my friends know that I'm passed out at 10 p.m. I'm already in bed because I like to get an early sleep. So that's my day.
That's awesome. I guess we'll have to close out with one more question, which is if there's any guy or girl, they're leaving yeshiva or they're leaving seminary, they're getting into the workforce, is there anything that you would give to them on their start of their journey?
I think that the number one is determination, having goals, and working hard, and showing that you are willing to show up, no matter when it is, how it is, and giving yourself over to something that you believe in, that you want to do, because like I said before, it doesn't go unnoticed, and people who are committed, they get rewarded. Maybe not today, tomorrow, but there's going to come that time that you're going to get rewarded for that.
Awesome. Tzvika, thank you so much for your time. This is
Thank you. This was
fantastic.
great.
This is amazing, and we'll see you at the next one.
Absolutely.